such sights to show you.
Good evening and welcome to Daymares podcast with your favorite people, Axel Spencer and
Adam Lewis. That was maybe the most high energy intro you've ever done, despite the fact that the little preamble we had before all this wasn't high energy at all.
No, I'm compensating here. But yeah, this week is fun week because I think it's safe to say it's both of ours one of the most anticipated and kind of liked films of the year. Am I right or wrong?
Liked films, yeah, definitely. I mean,
I think I was just anticipated because
I kept talking about it.
Like you've been talking about it, and like horror Twitter has been talking about it. And that was, I don't know, 6 months ago. Came out in England.
And it's
not that long, but
and it's technically it's still not out in Finland.
Yeah. But let's not talk how I watched it because I'm not sure if it's actually legal.
If the police are
you're going to have to censor that bit. Just bleep it.
You can use the VPN. Who cares? You can use the VPN to watch a movie.
Is it legal?
I mean, I think it's one of those things that people do, and it gets overlooked. I don't think the police are going to come knocking at your door. Let's put it like that.
No, but I think Netflix. I read upon this because not because I wanted to do it, but apparently Netflix is gonna, if they catch you using VPN, they will block your account.
Oh, it's only Netflix.
Yeah, and it's you know, what's the point of VPN when it doesn't even work with Shudder? So you know, still can't get my fix of horror.
Does it not? I thought it would. Oh well.
No, it requires hot tip for anyone who wants to get Shudder via VPN outside of England or America. It requires a card. Why am I talking like this?
Might be good. You try to go Irish.
I do that accidentally at times. I don't know why. But you need a credit or debit card from England, Ireland, or America to use Shudder. So
really, what you're asking for here is for someone to open an account.
Can I get your credit details, Adam?
Is this what this podcast has been about? For you to try and get my credit card details?
I've been
is this one elaborate
trying
scam?
to discreetly build up to it. Now it's just like, I'm so tired of this shit, I'm just gonna ask. But okay, so I'm not getting that. Fine, let's carry on. We're talking about Censor this week. A film by Prano Bailey Bond.
Great name.
Oh, fantastic
yeah,
name. I've never heard first name Prano in my life.
Neither have I. And then the moment, like the first time I heard that name, it was one of those things that you read and you go, "That's a strong name."
It's certainly a like director name. Kind of like, you know, you remember like Stanley Kubrick's. There's like, yeah, that's a good director name, and then you have like Quentin Tarantino, yes, and the Prano Bailey Bond, yes, that's the name. And the film is quite good.
Yeah, well. that helps. A strong name and a great film.
Yeah. So I suppose you can introduce the film to those who don't know it, because I think that's about 100% of our listeners.
Thank you.
Is both of them.
Thank you for allowing me to introduce the film. So the film is, as we said, it's called Censor. It's based in the mid-80s in England, at the time of when video nasties were getting a lot of heat when they were being released, and there's like a black market in video stores for video nasties, and if shops were caught with them, they would get shut down. With Censor, it's very much around a person who is a film censor who watches video nasties and goes, right, okay, if you want to put this in cinemas or have a home release, you need to cut this scene, you need to cut that scene. And the main character, Enid, is trying, or not trying, but more dealing with the trauma of her sister disappearing. So, do you know what? I've not even prepared a clip for this, so I don't know what I'm going to put here, but I'll put something, and then we can listen to it.
Yeah. Here goes the wild card.
This depiction is dangerous.
Come on, Enid. No one's going to pick this up and think it's a documentary. It's so fake.
To you, it might be sausages for intestines, but what if it gets into the hands of children?
Exactly.
Kids could be rewinding and watching those scenes over and over again.
Which is exactly what new government guidelines are pointing at. Video technology is
More
changing the rules.
guidelines. Great.
Not as if we haven't got enough on our hands.
How can we do our job properly if we're constantly bogged down by government bureaucracy?
It's the nation's sanity they're worried about. Why don't they stop slashing social services?
Okay, I get it. But I'm afraid we're not here to debate the government. Can we get back on track, please? Consensus on cannibal carnage.
Reject.
I agree. Few cuts. I'd pass it.
Enid.
Oh wow, that was a very beautiful clip, Adam.
We're very well thought out and professional.
Oh, absolutely. Professional is my middle name.
Say that. So go Axel Professional and whatever your last name is. I don't actually know your last name. I know your fake last name.
I mean, you don't even know my real first name by the sound of it.
It's Axel.
It's
who are you? Are you a Finnish spy?
It's my real first name is Axeli, but Axel is what I usually use with foreign people because it's easy to pronounce. And by foreign, I mean mainly English and Australian.
I mean, everyone's foreign, but that's interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And surname I will not disclose to the public.
You are a spy. I don't think you're Finnish.
I'm not Russian.
Were you
definitely?
Were you? No, I'm not going to say that. That's pretty grim. What I was about to say. Let's move on.
Well, we'll carry on. So the interesting thing, I think we can start off with the video nasties thing, is back in the 70s, and I think the early 80s, very, very, very early 80s, there wasn't really any kind of age restriction program for home video releases. So that kind of earthed this phenomena of very grotesque horror films being released for home distribution because it was cheaper than having a cinema release, which would have caused the age restriction, whatever you call it, to be surveyed.
Yeah.
And that, of course, went for the conservative government using these grotesque horror movies as a scapegoat for their own, mishandling of everything, as we've come to know. How many years they've been in power now? Like, straight, like, just...
They got in... So, 2010, they were in a coalition government with the Liberal Democrats. They had full control of government in 2015, so they've been in power that way ever since.
Yeah. And, yeah, so it's basically a scapegoat, wasn't it? It's just basically them going, oh, there's people being violent and there's horrible things happening. People watching too many horror films.
I mean,
let's fix this issue.
I'm going to throw my hands in the air straight away and say,
yep,
I'm a bit blindsided when it comes to the whole video nasties, if I'm going to be honest. But from what I gathered, there was a lot of violence going on around that time, and like with any kind of bell end dickhead person, they will, rather than looking to tackle the problem head on, they will look to find an excuse. And I think video nasties was that latest excuse. Like, you had in the late 1800s, early 1900s, people were going, the kids are reading Sherlock Holmes. That's bad. Let's ban Sherlock Holmes. And then later down the line, it was rock and roll, goths, and then...
radios, television, Harry Potter. It's all been blamed for the failures of the government, and and it was like, you probably won't be surprised by this, but the whole video nasties thing was very poorly handled by the government. There were like polls made with children, like had they seen video nasties, and I think there was one survey that had like 47 kids, and they were like, the results were like, it's like 60% of children have seen video nasties. And it was like, you asked 47 kids. And then there was another one, I think that's the more famous one, where kids said they had seen films that didn't exist, because the surveyors kind of like just drew random names, and they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that. So it's all, the reason video nasties were popular is because the government made the video nasties, basically.
Yeah, I mean, but from what I've sort of learned from it, just like briefly, like Googling, which, as we all know, is a great source of education, is that basically it was just one of those things. Like they became popular because they were a little bit out there, and there was controversy around it. Yeah, and that's
it was like must see.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you hear all the time, don't you? Like, this horror film's too horrible to show in cinemas, and you kind of go, I'll watch that now.
Yeah, it's like, I think, was it Paranormal Activity? They had that clip of people like fainting and screaming in the cinema.
Oh god, I mean,
and it's the most boring horror film ever made.
I don't know if I agree with that, but like, it's definitely not one of those films where I can imagine people in the cinemas going, screaming and shouting and fainting. Like, this isn't the 1950s anymore. I don't think people faint at horror films.
Oh no, they fainted at Raw. You heard it. We talked about it last week. But no, seriously, that's it's ridiculous. But it's always worked for horror to kind of like amplify mass hysteria to get people to watch them. Evil Dead was massive, and I remember it didn't actually get shown on TV in Finland until like 2003 or 2005. And of course, my brother recorded it and showed it to us when I was like
6,
9.
I wasn't far off.
Yeah, no, I was like 9 or 10 years old at that point. To show that scariest film in horror history, according to the channel, while my parents were away. Brilliant. I saw a woman get raped by a tree. Memories.
I don't think, to be fair, like, I can understand not showing a 6-year-old that.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I remember it being like the scariest horror film I've ever seen, and then watching it as an adult, I was just going kind of like, that looks so hokey. I mean, it's really entertaining film, but it's like one of those horror films that really work on kids. Those kids who were told, don't watch this, it's a video nasty, and then they watched it. I think that's the legacy of Evil Dead, and that's why it's regarded as being, part of the reason it's regarded being so great, because people have those fond memories of watching it.
Yeah, like, it borderlines being camp.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly camp, but it's also so grotesque in, like, it's we're gonna have to do an episode on Evil Dead at some point. We're gonna have to.
Put it on the list.
That's for another time. Yeah. But I think I watched an interview with Prano Bond, and she brought up this quote by David Cronenberg that I thought was brilliant. That basically, I think it was, censorship to protect people is the worst kind of censorship. And that's kind of the idea with the main character in this film, that she's kind of protecting people through these actions.
Oh, I mean,
kind of,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, so kind of like the idea, like, we don't want this to end on kids' hands, and like the whole idea of the conservatives at the time is it's going to influence people. They see horrible things happen on screen. They're gonna do horrible things to others. But the thing is, horror has never. I'm gonna say this boldly. Horror has never influenced horror. Horror has always been influenced by horror from like real world, and not vice versa.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a joke here. Nothing's coming up to my head. Go on with what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, there's always horror films, and 28 Days Later is influenced by the, what was it? Some pandemic in the early noughties.
Oh, the
90s.
The flu pandemic.
Was it bird flu?
No, it was early 1900s. It was like during the First World War, there was a pandemic, yeah.
Oh, I thought that was much more recent, like early noughties pandemic.
I know in early 2000s there was like swine flu.
Oh, it could have been swine flu or something like that. But yeah, and what else? What else can I think of? Nothing really. We'll carry on. But yeah, so basically, horror always takes influence from the real world, and I think the whole situation in the early noughties, early 80s, I mean, is like the government's mishandling of policies might have led to the violence, and the violence led to the horror films because they take inspiration from the real world. But then the government kind of turned that upside down, kind of, nope, there's violence things happening because of the movies.
I think, in a way, it's one of those where people can often think something's going to cause violence, and then that plants the seed. Like, people can go, ooh, what if people start learning from this and start doing something? And then people kind of go, oh yeah, that could happen. And then the worry of something happening can often be the catalyst for that happening. Whereas if people just watch the film and go, oh, that's pretty nasty, that's a pretty nasty film.
Yeah.
Then leave it at that. Then who knows what will happen. But it's very, 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 very rare for a film to influence someone's violent activities. I know there was that recent thing in Japan where a guy was dressed up as the Joker in like stabbing people on a train and set it on fire. But I can't remember I know that again, like there was the Batman shooting in America. Like, I think it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, those with Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
So I think it's one of those things like the worry is often bigger than it actually happening.
Yeah. Because even with those, I think Ian Lee pointed out that people who commit these crimes that are supposedly influenced by films will do those things nevertheless. Like, it's not just like because there's something wrong with them. It's not just going to be a film that kind of like makes them, oh, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's not a film that makes someone go, oh, I'm a serial killer.
Yeah, and it's often like media hysteria that kind of feeds all that habit. Like I remember, I just had this on my mind. There was, most recently with Squid Game, there was like a lot of talk, like kids are gonna reacting to violent games at school. It's like this. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I think just the media throwing it out there is gonna inspire kids to do that more than Squid Game itself. Like if they just play the Squid Game, the game from the TV show that it's named after, which I'm not sure if it's a real game, could be. Like that game in itself isn't that like any more violent than other games we played as kids.
I've not watched it personally. I watched one episode and felt like I needed to take LSD to actually enjoy it. But it was literally like, as we were speaking about this, it was the first thing that came into my head. Like the whole, like, from what I've gathered, it's very violent, and people are going, "Oh my god, kids can watch this on Netflix. What are they going to do?" Turns out they've not really done too much about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically there's just a bunch of games that if you lose at the game, you die. And I'm just thinking like there's a game. I hope. Can I spoil the game for you? One of the games for you.
You can spoil Squid Game as much as you want because I ain't watching it.
I mean, it's much more like character show. It's not even the violence isn't the point of it. It's much more of a character story anyway. But there's a game where they are up on a kind of a scaffolding, and there's two pathways with glass panels, which all the time on either side. One of the panels is like normal glass that will break if you step on it, and the other one is enforced, so it will take your weight.
Right.
So I was just thinking, like, how the fuck are kids gonna recreate that?
It's like, right.
They're gonna build a scaffolding at this school and put glass on it. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah,
let them if they can do that. Let them.
Let him. To be fair, it does sound like a useful...
Put it on YouTube and make some money out of it.
It does sound like a useful skill to have if they can build a thing that has glass, like a fragile glass and reinforced glass.
Yeah, that's like good subject for woodwork. All right, kids, tonight this week we're building a scaffolding with glass panels, and then we're gonna put you walk through it.
And then some of you may die, but that's a price I'm willing to pay for craft.
Yeah. You'll only learn by living. Okay. I noticed we're like 20-minute mark. We haven't talked much about
I know,
Censor
I was thinking that myself.
Yeah. But I think like going through slightly with Vienna Nasties is very important kind of groundwork.
Yeah. Definitely.
But Censor. Where do we even begin?
Yeah, with Censor. So it was one of those things that I kind of had, because as like the world was opening up when they thought COVID was over back in early the year, and cinemas started to reopen. It was one of those things I can remember looking at, thinking, okay, let me see what films are going to be coming out in the next few months, and this one was on there. And what drew me to it was the frame it used. Like, not to go into spoilers just yet, but it was the part towards the end where she's pleading with that woman and she's got that blood on her dress. And that was the frame I thought, that looks interesting. It sounded like the description for it sounded interesting. So that got earmarked in my calendar. And it was one of those rare circumstances where you kind of go in and go, I don't know much about this film. Let me watch it. And then you watch it and you go, holy shit, that was great. And it's one of those very, for me at least, it was one of those very sort of like great cinema moments where you go in, you watch a film, you don't know too much about it, and you go, holy fuck, that's great. And then now you've got this director who you can, because again, as with this podcast, we talk about a lot of people's debuts. This is Prano Bailey Bond's debut. Yeah. And now, like, she's earmarked in my head now. So I know she's got another film coming out next year, I think. I can't remember what the title is. But it's one of those, like, the moment that's got a release date, that's in my calendar. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to whatever she comes up with next. I'm kind of like the same. I saw it so much later than you, only because it came to Mubi. So thank you, Mubi. Worth the subscription. And I avoided like all spoilers, of course, because there's not much to talk about it apart from like horror Twitter, because it's a very indie film. But I kept seeing it like at one point all the time. That was all people were talking about. And then, of course, it died down a little bit, but still, like, constantly popping on my feed. Like, oh, Sensei's so good and everything. So that really kept my interest up, and it became, like, my most anticipated film of the year. And yeah, it didn't let down. It's a very slow pace for the start. But there's so much kind of still going on, which I love.
Do you think it's slow paced?
For the start, yeah, for sure.
Because I think it doesn't waste much time getting into it. I mean, it's less than an hour and a half. I don't think it wastes any time.
I mean, yeah, like it's not like there's still things going on. There's not like action. Like the real shit starts going down at the last 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
but there's still like enough things to keep you interested for sure.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's very much psychological for those first like hour and 10 minutes, and then those last 20 minutes are fantastic. But I'm sure we'll come on to that later. But for me, like, it kind of has the same feeling as Alien, almost, in terms of its pacing. Like, people go, God, Alien's such a slow film, isn't it? But they say that because the fucking xenomorph doesn't come up until about an hour into the film.
Yeah.
But it gets into it quite quickly.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same with this. Like, it sets it up very nicely, very quickly, and then you're into the film. You're into this character's life. Like that bit where she's getting the train home and she sees someone's walk past and she thinks it's her sister. Like,
yeah,
it's already that psychological element is pretty much there from the get go. And I think in terms of in terms of its pacing, I wouldn't go as far to say it's slow. Like, fair enough, it's obviously it holds a lot back into the last 15-20 minutes, but what horror film doesn't?
Bad ones, that's one. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like for example, like if you like to like very story based horror, this is definitely one to go for. If you like splatter, you'll like. I think people who enjoy that kind of like gore and like jump scares would be very bored for the first 70 minutes. But for, like, I know I love story-based horror, and this, like, kept me kind of, like, glued to the screen the whole time, because the story is so well paced, and it kind of reveals itself in a very interesting way, because the movie, same with kind of other horror films, indie horror films we talk about, like Possessor and Saint Maud, it doesn't give you anything straight away. You kind of like reveal the story with the characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Or after the characters, in this case, perhaps. I
mean, what really guides the film is the character Enid, and within that, Neve Algar's performance.
Yeah.
Because there's that scene when they're in that little that tiny little cinema room and they're watching whatever director's film it is, and she's sat there making notes on what bit needs cutting and what bit needs removing.
I thought you said which bitch needs cutting.
God no. Let me be clear, I did not say that. It's a which bit.
Bit, yes.
When she's just sat there with her notes and she's having those memories come back up. That performance is brilliant. Like, and it's one of those, like, I genuinely hope whenever, like, this film isn't going to win any major mainstream awards, but in the UK we have the BAFTAs. I genuinely hope at the BAFTAs it gets a bit of buzz, because her performance and the directing is fucking brilliant. And I do genuinely hope that people kind of go, yeah, that film that didn't get much attention, let's give it some attention now.
Yeah. Because
it thoroughly deserves it.
Oh, absolutely. There's like, her performance is very kind of like, it's kind of like very small, kind of, but very deep emotions most of the film. Like, she doesn't go crazy.
Oh, no.
And like, in a kind of, what's the word, exterior way. It all happens inside her very much. But you see it from her performance, and I love that. But also, like we talked about this earlier, there's like only one actor that I recognized before, like from the film. Was it Michael Smiley? The name, and that's like all the other actors are much like kind of like smaller names. But I think everyone does a tremendous job. I love the was it Beastman?
Yeah, it was Beastman.
Yeah, Beastman, played by, oh god, I should not have started this sentence before I read his name. Jerome Deloney. Jerome Deloney. I hope that's correct. He's like really kind of creepy without having any kind of like excessive mask or,
So what you're saying is he's a creepy looking guy.
He's a creepy looking guy. I mean, he's quite massive as well, wasn't he?
I mean, if by any chance he listens to this, sorry.
I'm just like living in the hope that he's much more likely to be situated in England than in Finland, and you're gonna have to pay for this.
Well, it was you saying it. Depends what kind of guy he is.
But my thoughts and opinions represent all of Daymares, which you are also part of.
Just going back to like Algar's performance. I mean, like, yes, like she's not that descent into sort of. I don't want to call it madness because I don't think it's not the right word.
Like psychosis.
Yeah, the sort of like a abyss of trauma, shall we say, if you want to get like semi-twatty poetic about it, where like, at the start you can quite clearly tell she's somebody who's in a way grieving, and then it gets brought up that her sister is missing or / probably dead. And then you can slowly see it from there, where it's in her performance where she goes, there are cracks there waiting to be revealed. They get revealed, and then over time, those cracks start to spread.
Yeah.
And in the way she does it, it's very subtle to start off with. It's just like, there's a thing in a film where she, like, her glasses, where when she has her glasses on, that's like when she's in reality, almost. And when she takes the glasses off, that's when she's out of reality.
Yeah, it's like Enid is a very complex character as well. Like, she's part of this conservative censorship program, which, you'd think, that's a not very good person, but then she's also portrayed as a very kind of kind character. And even though she's, like, very proudly doing this censorship thing, which we could have discussions about that, but she's like kind of does it to serve the public, to protect the public. So there's like very good tones to her, and she's very very much, despite some things that happen, she's portrayed as a very kind and kind of like good character. It's just like trying to cope with the trauma that we slowly learn about.
But yeah, like it's one of those, like, I can imagine people at that time who were doing the film censorships thinking, well, who are in that room, who need to decide what's getting cut, are probably thinking they are protecting the public for whatever reason. So, like, I don't think she's technically, like, a conservative person. I don't think, in terms of, like, politically speaking, I don't think there's any kind of that from her. That's kind of
the vibe I got from her.
You think she's like Tory?
The way she looks and kind of like acts is
she's mega Tory.
It's not like mega Tory. She's not a complete cunt.
She's looking at hungry kids thinking, "Fuck you."
Yeah, makes her peckish. But she's this one, like the way she dresses up is also like it's very conservative way to dress. Like she's very like button up, those big glasses and very grey. I
think that's just a time period. I mean, we're talking about something that was nearly 40 years ago. Well, a film that was set in the mid-80s. So I think that's just more set dressing, more than anything else.
No, I think I read an interview, like Prano Belly Bond didn't indirectly say that this character is
a Tory.
Conservative. Yeah, she's a Tory. She voted for Margaret Thatcher. No, but she kind of said that the world starts out less grey, and I feel that kind of also extends to the character. It's like grey, but then as we kind of lapse into her psychosis or, trauma being unveiled, the colours become much stronger and brighter. So I think that's kind of like that colour scheme. Like, colour scheme is, in this movie, I don't think it's an accident or just set dressing. I think there's very much symbolism going on.
But I still don't see that as portraying the character as a conservative person, as someone on the right side of politics. Like I think she's very. The film it steers her it steers the characters away from the political side of things in a way, while still having the politics in the background.
Yeah, like they aren't outright political. Like any political kind of expression is on the back burner, like you said. and there's some like movie so very deeply what's the word? Kind of. Oh God, forgetting language.
Political? No, I don't know.
Not direct. Like that is so involved with the very political issues that is video nasties.
Okay.
There are some. I just started rewatching Censor, and there was the discussion in the Censor room when they all gather around the table, like they're criticizing kind of like, instead of censoring these movies, why don't the government put money on social care, or rather don't take money away from social care?
Yeah.
So I think there's I know, like I wouldn't say I know, but I'm pretty sure Prano Bailey Bond. I'm just going to say her full name every time because it's such a wonderful name. I think she has a there is a political agenda or viewpoint, maybe rather, to the story, but it's certainly in the sleeve rather than outright on the table.
Don't get me wrong, like there is definitely politics throughout the film. I mean, that bit in the ending where they go, it's like that dreamlike sequence, and going, we've banned all video nasties. Crime's gone down to nothing. It's the perfect world, and you're like, yes. Like that film might as well be that bit might as well just be like a two middle fingers.
Yeah, that made me laugh. It's so funny.
But yeah, like I wouldn't say like yes, there are characters where you could probably go, oh, that person's a Tory, that person's a prick. Yeah. But in terms of like the main character itself, I don't think there's any kind of leaning in terms of politics in which way she would go. I just think it's very much someone who's going, this is my job, this is what I have to do.
Oh, so you're saying she's one of those central people who don't vote for anyone? I see. But no, yeah, like I do get your point for sure. This is just how that's just the feeling I got, but I can totally see.
And I'm saying you're definitely wrong and I'm right. So there we go.
All fun in politics. Yeah, and right, where do we go from here?
How so? I know.
Sometimes I feel like we should script this.
It probably would make it easier. So obviously, because I think I saw this 3 times in the cinema. I want to say.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, I know I was clapping about it on Twitter quite a bit, and obviously, British horror Twitter. I was going to say Twinema then. British horror Twitter was clapping about it as well.
Yeah.
What did you? Because by the sounds of it, you tried to go in as blind as possible, but you were aware of it. So, what was your first thought as you started to watch it?
I mean, I was certainly intrigued because as anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love all things 80s. Like, I love the music. I love the movies. I'm very just love that aesthetic. I actually made a short film a few years ago that has kind of 80s aesthetic. Some could even say it takes place in the 80s because of, the objects and everything. So I'm very intrigued straight away when we talk about video nasties and the 80s. And of course, because I love horror, that's the perfect combination with the 80s and video nasties. And the movie didn't let down the expectation at any moment. I was constantly kind of just admiring the aesthetic of it, which was modern, but you could still tell, this is the 80s. And it's just, I don't really remember thinking much of anything, just being, just watching it. It didn't kind of give me time to think anything. It's just enchanted by the movie in some way. But yeah, I didn't know anything about the film beforehand. I avoided all spoilers. I watched no trailers. I didn't know about the sister storyline. I don't think I even exactly knew it was about video nasties. And it's I think I probably thought it'd be bloodier.
Yeah, I know it's very much in the description like if you were to Google what the film, like if you just put in Censor film in 2021, it like I know it is like inherently clear in there that it's about video nasties. Like in terms of like the aesthetic, like yeah, I love it as well. But there are moments in the film where I noticed that they were playing with the budget a little bit in terms of like trying to cut costs because there's the phone Enid uses. My mum has that phone, and she bought it from I can't remember where, but she bought it from a shop for like 50 quid. So I can remember when she's like using the phone to call up her mum in the film. I was just going, "Huh, my mum has that phone." But yeah, I mean, like the aesthetic of this film, like we were talking about this before we started recording, like what the budget was, because obviously, as we all know, the budget is a very important part of the film. But yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know how much. Like I was guessing in the region of £1 million. You were guessing in the region of 3 million. For what they do with such a small budget is very impressive. Like, because it does very much feel like it's a film in the 80s at times, just for what like the general set dressing.
Yeah, they've very successfully kind of emulated that time period. It's kind of like reminds me how like Robert Eggers emulates his periods in like Lighthouse and Witch. Of course, this is probably, I mean, you could say in one way not as challenging. But then again, this also takes place in many more locations than those. Oh yeah, films.
I mean,
there's like a lot more to.
She's not writing dialect in like very specific manners, but like yeah. I mean, it's like
I did that in my short film.
Look at you, mention you're a director for the second time.
Yes, Dreamography seen on YouTube.
But yes, like that first, like I can remember that. When I first started watching it, I was just sort of like, it's very easily one of those films you can sink yourself into. Like, because I've not watched it at home yet. I've only still watched it in the cinema, so I'm still like going back from those memories.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had seen it in cinemas.
Honestly, like
it's so nice on a big screen.
I mean, the ending in the cinema with all the colours and shit is great. But I just remember watching it thinking, this is. I want this to go somewhere. Like it was obviously going somewhere, but they're often than not you can watch a film and it's not going anywhere. It kind of fizzles out towards the end. And like if you were you are a director, as you've mentioned already.
You can find my channel Axel Spencer.
Well, like you're directing and writing a film, you want it to follow a clear arc. Like you want it to have a start. Like if you were to plan a film on like a normal graph, you'd have your start at the end, like, at the beginning of the graph, and it slowly tickles up the graph, and it pings and it stops at the top. Whereas what can happen with most films that it just weaves up and down. And I do very much this is a film that it stops when it needs to stop. Like the stones it uses to get there are very much well laid out, well trod upon, and it's not someone trying to take the piss either, which I can often find with horror films. Yeah,
it's certainly it stops at the perfect point. It kind of like fulfills its purpose. It doesn't overstay its welcome, which, as you pointed out, is like something that sometimes happens. It's one of the worst things probably when a movie is too long. It kind of fizzles out and it doesn't kind of overshoots the arc. And this certainly is just the perfect length. In a time when some people, I've seen a lot of discussion like movies should be like I'm trying to think, was it like over 3 hours or less than 3 hours? I think someone said over 3 hours, which is ridiculous. I love my 90-minute movies, especially in horror.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I know recently you watched Mother, like Darren Aronofsky's.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect type of film in that sense, like to description, where it's for what I'm talking about. It has an interesting beginning. It kind of peters out towards the middle, it picks off, the film picks itself up at some point before the ending, and then when it gets to the ending, it kind of fizzles out. Like, it's very uneven in how it paces itself throughout the film. Whereas with this, it's very much, it does what it needs to do, and it doesn't leave you going, I needed more of that, or I wanted less of this bit, or more of that bit. It just sets everything up perfectly. And I feel like it's very rare you see that in a film.
Yeah. I mean, the main takeaway I got from that is we have very different opinions on Mother. But this movie, I'm glad we agree. But I feel like I'm just going to say this shortly. My biggest problem with Mother, like referring to what you said, I felt this beginning was extremely boring.
I thought it was interesting.
You get that. Yeah, then you get like a little bit of interest in like the first party scene, if you know what, about gathering. Then after that, it gets boring again for some time, for far too long from what I recall. Then comes this second party when the movie just hits you with all the things it wants to say in the face, like with a pan. It's like, this is what we want to tell you, and it's just like, oh god. So I'm glad Censor was like that. It's just perfect. It's also so it's kind of a film that you need to pay attention with.
Oh, definitely.
If you're kind of like dozing off, you will miss the like juiciest part of the stories. I feel like it's there, but from what I recall, it's already been a week since I saw it, so my memory's not very good. It's not like she's saying directly like, oh, my sister got lost in this play we did, and I might have killed her, and now I need to find her because I think she's alive because I saw an actress in a movie that I think is her. It's not that kind of movie. It's all much more subtle, but it's not like...
It never reveals its cards.
It's not insanely downplayed.
No. There's very much that element of still a mystery. Like, you still don't really know what happened to the sister. Like, you kind of go, something happened, they were in a forest, something happened, and now she's disappeared, or disappeared, or dead. And she's still clinging on to the hope that she's still out there, where one day she'll pop up, and everything will be fine again. And then that kind of thought in her head is very... parasitical, is that the word? I don't know. It's the one I'm going to use.
Good saying.
And it becomes an obsession for her.
And I love the fact that there's, in a way, no resolution to her like story arc, as in trying to find her sister, because you probably should put up spoiler alert, spoiler klaxon somewhere before the start, but around 50-minute mark. But basically, she never finds her sister. Like, that's the thing she wants to do. She wants to find her. But it was revealed at the end of this, Alice Lee, the actress, isn't her sister. And that's just ends her story arc until, like, she falls, like, straight into psychosis and starts to imagine this other reality. So I really like that, because that kind of makes me... I think it fits with the theme of the trauma, of kind of like trying to find resolution, but it's not always there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that ending where she's chasing after Alice, saying she wants to...
Oh god.
Like, she's very much like, she's not coming back from that. Like, regardless of what happens in reality, like, she isn't coming back from it. And it cuts to that sort of like dreamlike sequence where everything's now fine. Like, Alice is her sister, and they're back home with their parents, and everything's flowery and everything's happy, and it does those little intercuts of like...
The horror clips.
Yeah, and those bits are... They're unnerving, those bits. Like, I love them. And then...
Yeah,
it's just, like... Those last 20 minutes, I just love it. Like, it's so well done. I mean, the bit before that as well, when they're doing that film scene, and she kills the guy with the axe, and then you see that face in his chest. That bit came out of the blue, and I loved it.
Yeah, I was kind of like, wait, is Gabriel from Malignant here? My God,
Is this a Malignant sequel?
yeah, it's part of the Conjuring universe. It's all part of it now. But yeah, it's like the little horror clips of the like few frames in between, like where the colors change. It's all like Alice is screaming out of terror. That's some of the most unnerving bits, like especially those end in horror film alongside like Saint Maud's last 10 frames. I just love that.
You don't know what's happening. Like, obviously, like Alice Lee runs off into the forest. Enid's on that little rocky bit covered in blood and mud.
Yeah.
And then she kind of like closes her eyes, and then outside of that, you don't know what's happening to her. So you're just seeing all these little snippets of intercuts of her screaming, and you think, like, to me, it's I can't help but what's thinking. Like, I can't help thinking what's going on in reality at that point. Whether is she just like is she just passed out on a rock somewhere? Has someone come and got her and got her into a car and tried to get to a hospital or whatever? And like, for me, it's those two things that make it really unnerving. Like, you don't know what's going on else in reality, and you've got these little intercuts.
Yeah, because like when it turns into that, like she takes out the controller out of nowhere.
That bit's great.
Yeah, and then we turn into this VHS look. Like, you know that's not reality, but it's not like that's not what you're worrying about. You're like thinking, well, if that's not reality, what is? And that's because, you know, you have the horrifying pictures of Alice screaming and running away. It's like thinking, the main thought for me is like, is she now chasing Alice, trying to kind of like, I don't know, kill her in psychosis? And yeah, that's we don't know. That's a moving part of it.
What, like the actual ending, like the bit before it cuts off, the where the film just like pauses, and then you hear like a VHS tape coming out of a player, and it has Censor on it. That is like, I love that because it's so tongue in cheek. Yeah, like, and it's like to me, it's just like very.
It was all a dream.
It's almost British sarcasm in a way that I just really like about it, where it's going, we know this is fake, and you know this is fake, and it's kind of like a whole two middle fingers up to the whole video nasty drama.
Yeah, I think that's exactly kind of just going, it's just a movie. Like,
like it's such a sweet reminder of just going, you know films are fake, we know films are fake. Stop pretending.
Yeah. And I just remembered there was a bit in the movie as well, because the characters at the censorship kind of like talk about this incident of some man killing his wife and children and eating his wife's face, which is something that happens in a movie that they kind of looked through, and they allowed it to be released with few cuts. So that kind of incident awakens the uproar. Like, how could you release this? And that's actually another funny thing. That the people that supposedly are kind of like against video nasties because they're violent and they make people violent, make death threats to Enid. Which I think is brilliant kind of not juxtaposition, but kind of like linearity. No, that's not the word either. But it's exactly the issue that those people are kind of voicing about.
Well,
it's ironic. Is probably the word.
There's a bit later on in the film where they're talking about that murder, and they're talking about the when he's in court, and they're going, "Oh, he's never watched the film."
Yeah,
and I think that kind of goes back to the point we were making before. Like, people who want to or have the urge to kill aren't going into a cinema or sat at home and watch the film going, "Oh yeah, I can do that. That's a good idea." That thought's very much in their head way before they press play or walk into a cinema.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think like the whole themes like the censorship issue, it deals with it within such like a great tongue in cheek.
It keeps coming back to it in also Like, it's always there. As well as the thing I probably most loved about it is the film is about person who works as a censor. And she has censored the events of her trauma out of her memory.
That's a good way of looking at it. Never thought of that.
Yeah. That was like, for me, the kind of like catharsis of the film. Like, yes, that's amazing. And that's what happens with that Face Eater. I wonder if he was credited as Face Eater. No, he was never shown. Never mind. But it was kind of like he says, like, he doesn't remember what happened. So that's, again, like cutting out the trauma, the horrible thing, the horrible violent thing, just like a censor, they cut it out.
Yeah.
You can add a little like sound effect of applaud going after that. That was
one thing that I think we should talk about is one of the themes in the film is like toxic masculinity. Because you got Michael Smiley's character is very much like your classic. Like, you hear about it all the time. You're like your classic creepy, creepy producer, like almost a Harvey Weinstein type character, or maybe like someone who is like that. I don't know. And then you've got is it Frederick North?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got him in the film as well, where he's like this very pretentious, I'm making art here director.
Yeah.
And there's like that bit where he's filming Enid, and he's there like trying to get a performance out of it, and he just starts screaming and shouting. Like, I feel like how the film touches upon that is very, like, it's obviously done on purpose, because it's very relevant right now in terms of what's going on in the film industry, and it does it in such a very simple way, I think.
Yeah.
Like, not simple as in like, oh, it's a bit dumb and stupid, but simple as like it doesn't overcomplicate it. It just shows you how it is.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, portraying those characters, because there's like very notorious in like especially 80s horror films. You have a lot of those very sleazy producers and directors. But there's like, of course, also from what I've heard, like some of the people who make horror are also some of the kindest and loving people. Like, Frank, is it Nick Castle? Nick Castle, who plays The Shape in Halloween.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Everybody says he's like the nicest guy ever. Wes Craven, I think, is often cited as being extremely nice, and George A. Romero, I think, as well. And like there's like a lot of these like really kind people. I think David Cronenberg as well. Like, but they somehow happen to create some of the like most grotesque and disgusting kind of like horror imaginaries possible. But there are also a lot of those directors and producers that are basically is it Roger Corman, that sleazy, the ultimate sleazy 80s producer, who produced Slumber Party Massacre as well?
That one I am not too sure.
I'm going to double check, because I don't want to throw any shade on anyone who doesn't deserve it. Because the person I'm talking about is, like, his movies basically being pitched was just, boobs and blood. That's about it, boobs and gore. And especially watching, like, Slumber Party Massacre, there's, like, so much needless...
It sounds like an 80s
nudity.
80s creepy film.
Yeah, that's so much what it was.
It sounds like the kind of film you're hearing people get in trouble for today. Like, they're going, yeah, that guy in the 80s, he abused me. And people go, oh, well, the guy who made that Slumber Party Massacre film. He oh, yeah, I can believe that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, who knew? I don't know if there's any direct abuse that's been directed at Roger Corman, but and I feel like I don't mind nudity in films, but it's one of those things, you
There's
can
a time
either
and a place
use it
for
correctly, or you can exploit it, which was done a lot in the 80s, and I know a lot of the actresses also felt uncomfortable with that. There's some that didn't. There's some that didn't mind it. I think Barbara Crampton, like, said she was like completely fine and very comfortable with filming her nude scene in Reanimator, which is one of the most, how would you say it, uncomfortable nudity scenes to watch as a viewer. Like, it doesn't show as much, but it's just what's going on. It's just, oh my god. But that's another one. I forgot the name. Who directed that? He passed away like a year or two ago.
Reanimator.
Yeah.
Oh god, that's a good question.
I know him and I love his work, but I just forgot the name for some reason.
It is Stuart Gordon.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon. Like, I think people said he's also like another one of those like very loving, very lovely people.
Yeah, I think it tends to be the case, doesn't it, where these kind of people make really fucked up films, and then you kind of go, but they're actually quite a sweet person. I mean, it kind of like, I'm sure it's been said for many, many decades, and I think it's obviously still ringing true these days. It's like, why be a dickhead? You don't have to be a dickhead. You choose to be a dickhead, and I think that's an important thing on a film set, because if you're going to be choosing to be a dickhead on a film set, you're going to get to a point where people aren't going to want to work with you anymore. Yeah,
I mean, that's not strictly true. I mean, apparently William Friedkin's done some horrible shit, and Stanley Kubrick from was a bit of a dick,
this is why, like, I think I've said this before. Like, people talk about William Friedkin being this amazing director. Like, on the set of The Exorcist, they had an actual like priest on set for one of the scenes, and he wasn't getting the performance he wanted out of him. So he went up to him and went, "Do you trust me?" And the priest went, "Yeah, of course I trust you." And he slapped him. And I just felt like if you need to physically abuse somebody to get in a performance out of an actor, regardless of whether they've acted before or not, you are not a good director.
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing about that incident is also, like, the priest apparently doesn't hold anything against Friedkin, and he actually apparently thanked him for that after the scene. So it's kind of, like, I do have my problems with Friedkin, but it's also like, so much, you as a director, you need to know your actor. As an actor, you need to know a director. There needs to be that level of trust. And if you cross that border, it's so much on, if you cross that border, that's, you know, too much.
There's no going back after that.
Like, stop fucking doing that.
There's no going back, is there?
Yeah. It's a very thin line. And maybe you're not as good of a director when you need to go on that line far too often. So, and yeah, there are a lot of issues about The Exorcist production, but that's another episode as well, I reckon. So it's very refreshing to see nowadays, at least that we haven't heard of, there isn't as much of that kind of going on. Like, these horror films, modern horror films that we've been talking about, don't really have that kind of sleaziness. You know, Possessor, Saint Maud, Annihilation, Get Out, which it's not sleazy, but it has nudity. But it's also like done. Like Robert Eggers really, I think, handled well the nudity in that film.
It's very much. So it doesn't show you for it, does it? It doesn't kind of go, "Hey, here's boobs and his boobs and ass." It's very much.
Yeah. Like you can know that when they were shooting the scene, he didn't just go to the camera like, "Hey, shoot these boobs." Like, it was just like, there's a point for everything, and I'm glad to see that sleaziness has gone away for a very large part. Like, I really can't think of the last film I saw that would have suffered from that issue, like a modern film. I think it kind of died out with the Scream knockoff craze of the noughties. Oh no, actually, the remake phase of the 2010s. That's probably the last time I've seen that.
I don't know. I can't remember a film where I've watched it afterwards and gone, "Well, you didn't need this, this, and this in there," in terms of like nudity and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it is like, effective way to kind of like exploit the I'm gonna use the term sexual tension of the audience, but it's also works like any other tension. It's like I think I think many people say this are like a rubber band. Like it works best when you kind of like bend it enough so it doesn't snap, but it's like tight. If it snaps, that's like, you know, you've ruined the tension. Like you've given us too much of the boobitude. It's like, well, it's just sleazy.
Is that the finish for boobs? Is it?
Boobitude. No, it's just boobitude. But yeah, like it's just any kind of element of horror that you use to evoke any feeling of anxiety, unease, uncanny, or fear. You really need to know how to play that card.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's not much of it in Censor. But like, yeah, there's like two sleazy characters. Like, you just,
yeah,
I think it,
and you love to see them die.
Oh, I mean, the way he dies is like, you see it happen. You do kind of go, "Bleh," and you see it.
Yeah, I do you think the death of Frederick, was it Frederick North? Yeah,
the film director.
Do you think that was a direct homage to Friday the 13th?
How does he die?
He got his head chopped off.
Oh yes, she swings the axe, doesn't she? And
yeah, and then he has the arms in front of him, just like in Friday the 13th, Pamela Voorhees does.
I didn't get that reference when I saw it. Maybe if I watched it again, I just thought it was like quite a funny moment. Well, not funny, like one of those like sort of like a reference to a janky horror like video nasty where it's quite clearly a fake head.
There actually was one video nasty, and that clip was shown from the video nasty where someone's head gets chopped off. It's like clearly a mannequin head, and you just gotta feel bad for those productions. They're like, they know, it's like, oh, we know it's shit, but we have no money. But that's the thing, like, unless you had Tom Savini or like two other people that were like really good, you couldn't make great effects with the cheap budget.
Oh, no. And I mean, like, I think this again ties into, like, there are two themes throughout this podcast. We talk about, a lot about people's debuts and films that are inspired by Giallo. I mean, like, I don't think this goes as far to be inspired by it. Like, it's very Giallo adjacent.
But the thing, I think a lot of American slasher as a genre is inspired by Giallo.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
so
I feel like these days people like see red in a horror film and they go, Giallo. Where,
you know, I literally went on a walk today at like, it was already dark, and there was a building that had on three sides. There was like one side was lit up completely by red, one by completely by blue, and one completely by green. I took a picture of it. Was like, yep, that's Suspiria.
He's just thinking, Argento's been here.
Yeah. Oh, must be a dance academy.
So,
but yeah, you were saying.
I can't remember what I was saying, to be honest.
Giallo, like when you see Dread, people say it's like a Suspiria.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I feel people just like see a bit of red in a film. They go, it's Giallo. But like, I think on this one, like, I feel like with a lot of films. Or with anything in general, like anything in terms of like any art form, you can often see people's influences a little bit too much, especially with people's first films and debuts and stuff like that, where their influences, rather than being in the background and a little bit subtle, they are very much front and center. Like an example of that, like not Giallo, but like just influences in general, like Todd Phillips' Joker. Like, I'm not going to go into what I think about that film, other than that it's pretty shit. But like, that film is a classic example of the inspiration being the film rather than letting it being in the background. Because that film, like, if you've seen Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and Network, you kind of go, oh, okay, you've just stolen ideas from these films, and wrote your film around that, rather than letting it be a thing in the background for people to notice. And I think with Censor, obviously, there's probably 500,000 video nasty references that have gone over my head. But I think it does it in such a way where it's not like, hey, we're going to bonk you on this head with this reference now.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you do references to films nobody's seen, like what Quentin Tarantino does, nobody's going to notice.
Oh, no, like he references films that people like...
Yeah, he does have a lot of that, but he also, like, from what I was told, like, he does a lot of, like, influence from films nobody's seen.
The intro to Jackie
well.
Brown is like a direct rip-off from... I can't remember the film, but it's like a direct rip-off from another film.
Oh, I haven't seen that in years. I'm not really... Don't care for Tarantino that much anyway, so I can't really go into much detail there. But I've noticed, like, one of my biggest peeves in horror, in movies in general, but horror especially, is people try to have so many references, especially after the Scream phase, when like horror became self-aware, and there was constantly need to be like talking about, oh, there's like Jason because there's a hockey mask, and there's like, you know, like for me, like if you have too many clear references, like the Halloween remake had to the original, the latest remake that is, which is, I don't know, third remake or reboot. I know it's a reboot sequel. I don't know. Anyway, it's like takes you away from the experience because it reminds you of that.
It reminds you that you're watching the film.
Thing. You haven't seen the reboot
Oh
sequel?
no, like I'm just saying, like the moment I see stuff like that, it reminds me that I'm watching a film sometimes.
Yeah, and that's really takes me out of it. So, the Censor didn't have really much of that I recognized. That was like what I think might be a Friday the 13th reference, but that's about it. And even then, you know, it's still not as in your face. Yeah. It's not like he suddenly has a hockey mask on or something that, you know, you can still kind of enjoy it. Especially, it's such a cathartic moment seeing that guy die.
Which one? Frederick North or Michael Smiley's character?
Yeah, Frederick North. Really goes to know. Don't be shit to your actors and then give them a real axe.
So, what's your favourite moment in this then? Because as far as I'm concerned right now, I am going to take a lot of credit for you watching this film.
I think it's like 50% for sure is you liking it, but I think I was.
It's 100%. Let's not go any further.
Kind of intrigued by. Pardon?
It's 100%. Let's not go any further.
Fair enough. But my favourite bit, I kind of have to go with the ending with the flashes in the VHS tape. Like, that was so kind of like, I haven't seen that done that way in any other horror film. It was so unnerving and done to perfection, in my opinion, executed to perfection, that I just, like, when it first happened, I kind of missed it. I was like just looking at something. I don't know. I probably had a dishwasher on, or something. Just looked away for a moment and just saw on the side eye that like flashing in like grey and blue scale color, just screaming in a car and just like what?
I think.
Just
for me, it's when she's in that cinema, watching that. I think she's watching a Frederick North film.
Yeah,
and she's
go in the church, is it?
Yeah, and she's sat there with a notepad, like.
Yeah,
it's the level of acting in that scene that I love so much.
Yeah,
and I do genuinely think everyone involved in this film and people who have seen it should be shouting from the rooftops about people getting awards on this film.
Yeah, go fire some fireworks to celebrate it.
Just get a massive firework that says "Give Neve Algar a BAFTA, you cunts."
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh, I wish you could get like personalized fireworks. But yeah, there's so many good bits in this film as well, and it's just that somehow reminded me of this bit. I was just thinking, like, do you think that Enid's co-worker, the guy with the glasses, after that scene, I think, then we watched going to church, do you think he was attracted to Enid? Because I think there was kind of implications of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's that bit where he pretty much like directly asks her out.
Yeah, and that actually led me to think, like, this is again kind of like going back to her in my opinion, very conservative clothing. That did you get a feeling it might be insinuated that she's asexual?
No.
Okay, that's just me then.
No, I mean,
it's not like strong. I was thinking like there's a really layered portrayal here, but I was kind of thinking like it'd actually be cool because there really isn't much of that representation in film.
No, I didn't get that. I mean,
yeah.
In terms of like films with asexual characters, I mean the other one that springs to mind is on Chesil I can't even say the fucking word, on Chesil Beach, but that's like a very mediocre film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say she's asexual. I think she's just somebody who's living through a lot of trauma and doesn't have space for dates.
Yeah, or like she didn't even think about it. I think that's just completely blanked him, and it's certainly about the trauma. I was kind of like hoping that'd be great presentation.
Oh yeah, it'll be great. Like, obviously, films struggle with queer representation at the best of times. You often get gay lesbians, and that's it. You don't get bi
and
people.
they die most likely.
Yeah, you don't get bi people. You don't get asexual people. You don't really get non-binary people. You don't really get transgender people. So
yeah,
I think we're getting there in terms of that. I think we'll start seeing it in like 5 years, maybe.
Yeah,
hopefully,
absolutely. I certainly feel that there's kind of a change coming in that respect, but it kind of needs that one person to really go through with it, like to help others notice, like, hey, actually, we should do this.
Yeah, like
because that community has been so. All the representation has been negative, pretty much in horror. Like from what was the movie? Is it? Oh god, damn it! I forgot the name. It's like Friday the 13th knockoff. Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, I've never watched that.
That's the one. It's a classic. It's surprisingly good actually for its budget. It's not like very deep or anything, but as a slasher movie, it's pretty enjoyable. But it has, I'd say, quite horrible and not probably intentionally, but very mean-spirited trans representation.
What film from the 80s doesn't have that?
Yeah, that's the issue. But yeah, hopefully we'll see more queer representation in the future. Does anything else spring to your mind that you want to get off your chest about Censor?
No, I mean, I'm just disappointed it didn't have a bigger reach. I mean, I know now it's on Mubi, but I'm not. Yeah. I know there's issues. I'm not sure which, because I wasn't aware that Mubi had region lock on certain films. I thought it was just like an EU platform type thing, where it had like foreign films on there and anyone could watch it if they had a subscription to it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But I'm happy that it's on a platform that now has quite a big reach on it.
Absolutely.
And hopefully it will get more attention on it as well. And also, one thing I would love to see is bloody Prano Bailey Bond's short films. I would love. I know she's made music videos, but I would love to see the short films because I can't find them for the life of me.
Yeah. This week you can't scold me for not seeing the short film. Because you haven't seen them either. Yeah. Gonna maybe have to keep an eye out for those. Maybe one day.
Yeah. And it's just a great film. Like, honestly, like if someone's made it this far and they've gone, I want to watch that, just get a VPN, get a Mubi. get a Mubi.
Or if you're unsure if you're unsure if you should see it, go fucking see it. If you like story-based horror or story-based movies, even, go see it. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's not scary. Don't worry about that. If you don't like scary movies, you're fine. It's not scary. It's thought-provoking. It's and really fucking good.
Yeah, and again, I think it fits in what we've been saying here and there for our other podcasts, where we're seeing this sort of renaissance of horror, especially with women.
Yes, there is a bit of a fight back at the moment, though, with the resurgence of remakes and reboots. It's coming back again. I'm slightly terrified by it. Like, there's some good in it, but do we need more Halloween films? No. Do we need... I never really liked Chucky. Hellraiser, I'm looking forward to, because they've done some really great decisions with that so far.
I'm not too fussed about Hellraiser.
Oh, I love the original film. I haven't seen any of the others. But, yeah. Looking forward to that. But, that being said, out of 10, how many bleeps would you give this film?
How many?
And I fully expect you to edit a bleep over whenever I say bleep.
Oh, you're expecting me to put like an actual bleep in there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Considering the job I've got on my hand on editing this, there is a good chance that's not happening. Considering the job I've got on, the job I have with editing this, there's a good chance that might not happen.
Then I just need to go bleep.
There you go. I can use that then. I would give this a 9.
9 bleeps. Yeah, I'll probably go the same, really.
Yeah, like, there's a part of me that wants to give it a 10 because I love it so much, but I don't like. For me, a 10 is like, reserved for the special.
Yeah, I think we've have you only given 10 to Get Out? Didn't we give that 10?
I can't remember.
I think we gave that a 10, and it's well worth it. And like for Censor, there's nothing bad for me to say about it.
Oh no!
But for a movie to be 10, I kind of wish more emotional connection to it, like emotional impact. And it just is a great story in Censor, but emotionally it wasn't quite gripping as like something like Get Out.
I don't like. I think it was gripping. I don't like. For me, like a 10 out of 10 film is like Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Something where I go.
Oh really? I had no idea about that film.
The film that I never talk about.
Yeah, I don't think you ever mentioned that.
No, I've never mentioned the greatest film of all time.
Yeah. It's like I have no idea. Like, have you seen Titan? You'd never talk about that, but like.
To be fair, I've not mentioned it all that much on Twitter. I've put one tweet out since I've watched that.
Oh really? I thought like when you saw it, I remember seeing like 10 tweets about Titan.
I had 10 tweets before I saw it.
that might be it. Like,
saying that I was going to watch it.
Oh man!
So a Daymares
we'll
night.
Talk about that in 10 years' time when I see it.
We really do need to be keeping track of these scores.
Yeah, kind of need to go back to every video. We need an assistant. If you're seeking job that doesn't pay, you can be our assistant. Email us at... We actually probably shouldn't share our email.
Isn't it? It's like...
Put your
Daymares.
application into comments below.
I mean, it's not that intensive a job either. It's just going back and listening to a podcast and going, yeah, you gave that a 9, you gave that a 6.
Yeah. The only problem is it's a podcast by us. So
you are going to have to put up with a lot of shit, that's true.
Yeah. At least I did no accents this week.
That's good. We didn't touch upon any kind of racism.
Yet. Okay, good night, everyone. Have a good night and don't let the conservatives censor you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.